Good evening, and you're very welcome to another episode of the Final Whistle Women's League of Ireland podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with me, Breifne, Earley, and of course, as ever, Aaron Clarke joins me to talk about all things football. But we won't be doing a whole pile of football this week because it's the drama's all off the pitch in the last couple of days. Aaron, Athlone Town on paper into the Europa Cup. They've had 3 wins before in the Champions League. Great European seasons, real good feel-good factor with the club, top of the league, big win at the weekend, puts them 4 points clear. Everything's in their own power. And then rumors start to circulate about the manager potentially resigning from the job on, I think we talked about it privately on Saturday evening.
So the first rumor I got was literally minutes after full-time whistle against Shamrock Rovers.
Makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I checked with the club. We got a confirmation back that there's nothing to see here. We kind of put that to bed for 24 hours, and then the club announced that he had in fact resigned from the role. So the league champions, currently top of the table, preparing 48 hours out from a Champions League. Well, maybe to be fair, 72 hours at the time of the announcement. From a Europa Cup game against Glasgow on Wednesday evening. Now with no manager, how do we find ourselves here? Because it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a mad one, and it's not something that I had on my bingo card. Even when the text message come into me on Saturday, and like even with you being away, I was like, do I say it to him? Do I get him to ask the question for me? Because, and then like even you were sort of puzzled, and when you text me back being like, yeah, I heard nothing, you were still manager when we spoke to the club, and then all of a sudden the next day it's like, wow. Is it a surprise based off of what we've now sort of started to hear in terms of the comments that have come out even from Colin Fortune himself? Like initially there was probably 6, 7, 8 different stories doing the rounds. Then last night, sort of 3 people turned around to me and said it was in relation to contract stuff, and then he sort of pretty much come out and said today in an article with the Westmeath Independent, Westmeath Independent, pretty much saying that he felt undermined as management and creating confusion in the dressing room. He talked about asking for a new contract, and the club sort of saying financial audits, but he talked about sort of players being approached and stuff like that. It doesn't. It sort of asks more questions than it does even his comments today give answers, because I listened to the new CEO's social media post last week where he sort of talked about transparency, talked about that whole thing of wanting to be transparent, wanting to let people know. Stephen Gray said, and then when you sort of see it, and like even when you read his comments where he sort of says, "I'm only in the job 5 weeks." I'm quoting the Wexford Examiner here. "I'm only in the job 5 weeks as CEO. I'm working 12-hour days trying to sort everything out. I empathise with Colin. I empathise to Colin. Could you please give me time, because everything's being reviewed. The club's in the middle of a financial audit at the moment, and everything we're going to do is going to be based off of these financial results." The one thing I would say on this, right, and if you pull up, anybody who's listening to this right now pulls up LOI TV and goes and looks at any of Athlone's men's and women's games, bar the 2 Champions League games, the crowds are dismal in LOIWomen. So they're not necessarily bringing in a lot of money. So no matter what they're doing in terms of off the field, there's a lot of financial expenditure coming in from Athlone. It's not cheap in this league to be successful. We've seen that. We've seen with what's happened in terms of players coming in, players going, even at other clubs, the commitment of financials that's needed to be competitive at this level. The question is, in this situation for me, is do the new owners fully understand the cost of being successful in the League of Ireland? Because are they aware of what's what, and maybe they come in and now they're seeing, okay, it's a little bit more expensive. There's a lot of questions, and for them to say it's a financial audit, there's one of 2 ways you look at it, and we sort of talked about it after the year. Either A, he's not the man that they want in the long term, or B, it's a genuine thing. And it's difficult to say whether it's a genuine the audit is the reason, especially when Colin is sort of quoted saying that players are. He's even having approaches about players. It's sort of it's a tricky one to sort of balance.
The reality is, though, let's be honest about it, Aaron. Like a financial audit in the League of Ireland is fairly simple. Like, okay, you can get into the nuts and bolts, and it might take time to get to the actual figures of it. But I'll give you a clue. Nearly every club in the league is losing money hand over fist. They're relying on handouts, bailouts. You can call it whatever you want, but it might be an individual or a business putting money in behind the scenes, or it might be the community putting money in behind the scenes. But none of them really, bar maybe UCD, are financially viable. And UCD are only viable because they don't have salaries. They pay scholarships instead of salaries. It's significantly cheaper. And they've cut their cloth to measure. They've got support from the university and facilities and that sort of stuff. So their cost base is a little bit lower.
Like, because if you read what he's saying there in terms of budgets are going to be set based off of financial audit, does that mean Athlone aren't going to be competitive again in the league? And that's the sort of the other side of that you look at. Because
are we looking at Athlone from 5 years ago again in the Women's League next year? Like, I think those decisions don't need a financial audit at this stage. Are we going to be full-time? Are we going to be part-time? Are we going to be semi-pro? Are we going to go back amateur? You make those decisions not based on whether you're making a profit or not. It's whether you want to be that or not in this league, because ultimately none of them are going to be profitable. So none of them, you don't need an audit to make those decisions, in my opinion, because you know what the audit's going to tell you at the end of the day. You've no money. It's really, really simple. Athlone have done some strange stuff over the years. I know there was, I don't know if this is still the case, but I know 5 or 6 years ago, to play for Athlone underage in the League of Ireland, you made a contribution every week. I think something in the region of €20 a week.
Yeah, then I think around COVID time the FA stamped that out all clubs, and there's even times where there was League of Ireland clubs that were having to pay sort of fees and stuff like that. And I think the FAI has now stamped that out at all levels, and that sort of stuff does not scream elite.
No,
to me, that does not scream elite at all. That doesn't. Like the other side of it then, and when you talk about Athlone doing some interesting stuff, we haven't heard anything from the new German signer, Katrina Olszczek Ledger, who signed with Alexa Strickland. Hasn't featured, is she even at the club? I was doing a little bit of looking, and like it's sort of a case of it's a strange time in the sense of, because you're on such a crest of a wave. You're with results that have gone their way this weekend. It looks as though they're probably big favourites to win a second Premier Division title.
I can see everybody's point of view. I've actually been on both sides of this discussion so closely. It's unbelievable in the Colin Fortune aspect of these things. 15 years ago, I was at St. Francis, went to the Champions League. Again, maybe less profile, but definitely as results. We won 2 of the 3 games, best results of any Irish team in that competition up to that point. Came home and was hearing whispers that, same as Colin said, hearing whispers of players been poached by other clubs within the Dublin area. And we're talking decent players. We're talking Megan Campbell, Katie McCabe. These kind of girls were all at the club at the time. But hearing whispers of them going to Raheny or Peamount or wherever it might have been. And so I spoke to the club and said, listen, this is happening behind the scenes, behind everyone's backs, essentially. Like, it's not right. It wasn't the end of the season, but it's football. It's what happens. And I was kind of saying, we need to know what we want for next year, or we lose these girls and we don't get the opportunity to keep them. So what are we going to do? Can we sit down and have a chat with it? So I met the club about 3 days after we came back from the Champions League, and everything I was getting back was, we're going to review the season. We're going to make decisions at the end of the year. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I heard the word "we" so many times, and I kind of started to feel I wasn't part of the "we." So I just asked a straight question out like, when you say "we," am I involved in that "we"? And I was told in no uncertain terms, no. So I just handed in my resignation, like literally I said, well, if I'm not part of the "we," I don't need to be here. So I walked out.
So on that, and this is where I want to get your side of it, just because of. So on that, the question I'd have from Colin Fortune is, how long has he been asking these questions? Because I know now from what you're saying there, as soon as you get sort of told or you get put on the long finger, you're probably extremely demoralised, extremely frustrated?
I wasn't, because I've been through a couple of similar situations in a few different, like, football is football. When your face doesn't fit, your face doesn't fit. It usually has very little to do with you. It's just you're not the face that the person in charge wants in that role. So, like, people get sacked from football clubs every day of the week. It's not life defining, you know. It's really tough to take at the time, but once you've been through it 2 or 3 times, and every manager's through it at least once or twice in their careers, like, it's not unique to any manager. It's fairly standard. You will be mistreated by football clubs. That's how football works. And I could give you hundreds of examples. But for me, I think it's obviously a personality clash between Colin and the incoming board / CEO / management structure of the new club. It's kind of obvious, reading between the lines, that the club don't see Colin as the man in the long term. That's
Can I
quite
ask a question on that?
riding the crest of a wave like he has been for the last month. That's a bit of a kick in the stones. I'm not going to lie.
Can some of this sort of be also related to the fact of he has relations to previous ownership of the club, and like, because the problem is in this situation is like, you're dead. They've never, like, Athlone have never they've never won the league before. Then they won the league the first time. Then they've made progression steps each time over the last couple of years. Tommy's done great work. Kieran's done great work. Colin's come in and sort of taken that next step in terms of getting them to the next step of the Champions League, and now into the Europa Cup. And like, the concern I'd also have is, and it's not necessarily just that it's new ownership as well, it's the sheer volume of turnover. Like, we also heard a little bit of talk last year about Kieran Kilduff. There was a little bit of murmur on contracts and stuff like that, and Larry Ryan hasn't appeared back for them this year. There was talk about contracts off the field as well, in terms of them personalities. And like, my concern for Athlone is it's all well and good sort of turning around being like, okay, we're going to invest. You're going to invest into the women's side. You're going to do that. But as sort of Colin has said, like, we've seen with these sort of players, is some of these players that they've got on their side, if another League of Ireland club sees that maybe a Hannah Weish is maybe not fully tied up, or a Maddie Gibson has little options, or Kelly Brady, they're going to go and try and see can they poke that fire a little bit, and see can they.
100%.
And the thing about it is, and you go back to I'll go back to Colin O'Neill, when Colin O'Neill was first taking over at Shamrock Rovers, when he had that infamous meeting with Amanda Budden when the season was still on, because Budden was at Shelbourne, wasn't on a professional contract, and he had that meeting with her where she didn't play against Clarke then at the weekend. Like, the problem is if players are technically, if they're with the window closed, if they're free agents at the end of the season, they're free to discuss.
Even, am I wrong? Even if they're a professional contract, you can talk to other clubs in the last 6 months of that contract.
That's what I'm saying. So as soon as that window closed, they're available.
You can argue the morality of it. You can argue the loyalty of it. But, like, the clubs aren't going to be loyal. We saw with Colin this week. The clubs aren't going to be loyal to players and managers. So why should players and managers be loyal back? Now, I'd be of the type, if you're in the jersey, you give 100% of that jersey. But I'd be in the minority in most people in the professional world of football.
But like, the thing about women's football is, and especially in Ireland, women's football is not going to pay your bills that you're going to be able to retire. You're going to be able to. So for a lot of players, it barely pays. You're right, it barely pays the bill. So it's, how do you sort of maximize your opportunities while you can, and while you've got that profile, or you've got that sort of thing. And like, I was looking forward to. I'm gonna be outside. I had a completely different show planned this week in my head, thinking, I was like, because thinking back to about the nostalgia of this season and the enjoyment of this season and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I was like, all right, we'll have a chat about, this season, about all things general, and boom, this drops in. Like, this is going to be controlling of everything coming into a Europa Cup game. Like, even when you read the article in the Westmeath Independent, and Stephen Gray sort of says at this stage he couldn't even say he was going to be in charge, and the game was Wednesday evening.
Now, I have to say, I don't think this looks well for anybody. Nobody comes out of this looking particularly well.
No.
I think the circumstance I outlined 15 years ago, we had one game left in the season, and the club had told me they were going to concede it. So we were effectively at the end of the year. This situation is so different. You're still in the European football. you've got a really good opportunity, I think, to do damage against a really good Glasgow City side. I think, can they beat them? Absolutely. Are they favourites? No, but they could land a surprise. They definitely have the players to do it if they've everybody fit. You've just secured a really healthy advantage with 5 games left in the league season going into the last stages. So you're 4 points clear with a game against Shels. You kill the game, you kill the league if you beat Shels. Even if Shels beat you, it's still in your control and out of their hands. So, like, if I was now in the situation Colin finds himself in, I think I stay. Even if the club have told me you're not, even if the club's saying you're not part of the plans, I think I go public with that. I think I go out and say, I'm stepping down at the end of the season. I'm going to enjoy the last couple of weeks. It's going to be a really exciting 6 weeks to the end of the year. You control the narrative, because the reality is this is Irish football. Everybody knows everybody. Never mind football, Irish sport. If you get a reputation for being, and I hate to use this term, but like being trouble, you won't get any other roles elsewhere. You'll get blackballed. Now, I don't think.
Look at even last night, though.
I want to finish that because it's really important, because I don't want to give off the impression I think Colin is trouble. But that's what people who stand up for themselves, people who ask questions, get that moniker of being called, oh, they're too hard to work with, their expectations are too big, all that sort of stuff. And I think we need more of those people in Irish sport, and we need to embrace the people who are prepared to put the effort in and raise the bar. And yeah, you're right. Each of the managers have raised the bar, like from the first year or two of Athlone to where Tommy left them in a cup final, massive step. The next step, where they got across the line and won those trophies under Kieran, was a big step again. In reality, the step to where they are right now is not as big maybe as those first 2 steps. Yeah, they've got good results in Europe, but they've got them against teams that, let's be honest, we both expected them to beat. So in terms of surpassing the expectation of the performances, when you look at the resources available, when you look at the players on the pitch, when you look at the history and the starting point of each manager coming in, Colin's kind of had the easiest transition of the 3, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. And
without underplaying what he's done, but I just think if it was me, and I know there's an expiry date on my contract, and I know it's not going to be renewed, which is kind of clear. That's why he left. He even says so much himself that he knew that. Well, reading between the lines, he knew it wasn't going to happen from there. I think you just kind of you have to give yourself the best chance of getting another job, whether it's back in junior football, whether it's in the League of Ireland, whether it's wherever it might be. And I just don't think he comes out of this looking particularly well. And the interview today in Westmeath Independent, and particularly the club's response in the Westmeath Independent, I think they both fall short of what I would expect from both individuals.
So for me, I have a massive thing with Athlone right now, and it's something that I'm interested to see. This Athlone project goes one of 2 ways. It either goes that they're dominating Irish football for years to come, or they fall off a cliff. In 2023, they announced that they had plans for women's soccer facilities approved by the local council, about having additional facilities for the women's team only. We're now further on. Yeah. This is now the question: is, are these new management that are these new owners that are going to come in? Are they going to honour this? Are they going to just be looking at it? It's a cost thing. It's not doable anymore. It's not. It's put it to the side. I think this next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we're really going to see how committed the new owners are to Athlone Town's women's side. And I think we will really, really see the difference. We will really, really see that over this course of the period of time. And like, the question for me is, if you're the players, how do you focus on Wednesday evening? You know, with all the turmoil that's been going on, like whether you like them, didn't like them, whether some players got on better with them, some players, had different relationships with them. Because the same with every manager. Not every player gets on with every manager, but other players have great relationships and other players work very well with them. Like, how do you as players sort of switch that and be like, okay, manager's gone. 2 days, a couple of days for 3 days for a big game. We need to focus on the away leg in Glasgow. Like it's I'm still trying to process my head around, and like as I was going to say to you earlier, like the League of Ireland is such a small community in the sense that when all the stories start to come out, the narrative or the clearer narrative around the contract gets to the top very quickly.
Yeah.
And that would come to me from people from within other clubs. So people talk all the time as well. And I think you are right. I think Colin Fortune, he's not going to come out of this situation great. Athlone aren't going to come out of this situation great. No, there's no winners. There's only losers in this situation.
You can't get on when you're on a run like Athlone are on at the moment. If you're struggling to get on with each other within that environment, you're really like, there's no, maybe the best thing is that they part ways for everybody in the club. But I think the worry for me is, and I suppose I would have seen it firsthand at St. Francis, I came in last minute because there was a row and the manager left 6 weeks before the Champions League or 4 weeks before the Champions League. This is 3 days before the Champions League. And I got the opportunity because this happened with the previous manager. I came in, we got through the Champions League, and then it became quite clear that I was just a stopgap. But I'm okay with that. I had a great experience. It was a great bunch of girls, really good opportunity. But like the fact that the club didn't exist a year later, there was a bit of shouting fraud about that. Like, do you know what I mean? Where it's like,
yeah,
I told you this way, and it's gone this way. It's very hard to have sympathy for them in that sense. And I think Athlone are in danger of going one of two ways here. There's a fork in the road here, and if they have a plan, if it was always the plan all along to bring somebody else in and they had a man identified for next year, then that's one thing. Or I'm say man or woman identified for next year, that's one thing. And they can just speed that process up and bring them in earlier than they had planned and give them that opportunity to hit the ground running. But if this has actually come out of left field and it was just a row and it's blown up and now they find themselves with no plan B or no even plan A in terms of what they're going to do to replace Colin, then it's an absolute cluster.
Disaster. And I said this to you off air. I don't think Gordon Brett's the man to take them forward unless you take absolutely everything else off Gordon Brett and you say women's first team football. There you go. That's it. Because he can't do what he's doing with the likes of the director of football stuff. There's not enough hours in a day for Gordon to do all of that sort of stuff. And the question is like, yes, you would expect Gordon to take the team on Wednesday.
Yeah.
What happens off the back of Sunday, which we will talk about now in a minute, because I'm going to rant again even more now in a minute when we talk about Sunday. Then you go back into the second leg the following week. So, like, there's so much there that's still to be played out or still to be sort of ironed out. And timing is just horrific. And it's frustrating with the fact of, because I'd love to see Athlone get through, because we've had conversations if Athlone get through, is there a potential we can have a second team in the Europa Cup next year? How big that could potentially be for Irish football.
Yeah.
But it's disappointing. Hopefully, being on the ground in Glasgow on Wednesday, I may get to talking to either Athlone fans or people within Athlone, sort of understand a little bit more as to what's actually gone on and sort of get some, even if it's conversations off the record, sort of to understand what's gone on. So but it's a difficult time. I think will we go and talk about
let's talk
about the football.
Let's talk. Oh, go on. Talk about what?
I want to talk about the cup semi-finals.
Yeah.
And I flagged this one. I flagged this one, Breifne.
Yeah. No,
I don't.
We've been talking about that.
I don't care if the FAI give out to me over this. I flagged this to the FAI weeks ago, where I said when it first became aware to me that the rugby game was scheduled, I flagged it. I'm not going to name the individual in the FAI because the individual in the FAI, he may have been told at that stage that was what was said to me is, and I have an email there to say that the game was not being moved. It was going to be played in Tallaght on the Saturday. Then all of a sudden, Leinster continued to sell tickets for the cup semi-final. Continued to sell them. Contact the FAI again this weekend. I was told to contact somebody else. Got a response off them to say that to be announcement on Monday or Tuesday. Announcement comes, and it was the other option that was sort of being given to me that the game was going to be played on Sunday. However, our good friends in TG Carr can't always commit to a Sunday. And I have no problems with TG Carr turning around and say they can't commit to a Sunday. because we're both Gaelic football, camogie ladies football fans. We see the work they do with the hurling and all that, so them sort of things. So them turn around and say we can't show that game live on TV. To me, that turns around and says it's a calamity on whoever it is between the FAI, Shamrock Rovers, South Dublin County Council, whoever it is amongst that group who has made this error.
Yeah.
It's a calamity. And now we're looking down the barrels of an FAI Cup semi-final between Athlone and Shamrock Rovers that was supposed to take place primetime Saturday night on television, live on TG Car, straight after the first semi-final. I was looking forward to it because I was like, grand, daily mount. I'll jump in the taxi straight across. I'll be in Tala for 7:30 and I'll be there for the second game. And it'll be an unreal evening. 2 games live on television. What an advertising for the women's game, for the Women's Cup. First time we've had FAI Cup semi-final games on television, and all of a sudden it goes tits up. To me, it's.
Are you surprised?
No, and you know what? I'm even more frustrated and I'm more angry over this than I am with the way the Athlone situation has played out. Because to me, this problem was identified straight away. This problem was identified early, and there was no fix put in place. It was sort of a case of it was.
Let's see what happens.
Like the fact that Shamrock Rovers are a tenant in that ground, they play all the women's games there, and the women's games getting moved for a pre-season rugby friendly. To me, that's not good enough. That's downright disrespectful to the Shamrock Rovers players. People can turn around and say, Shamrock Rovers come in and talk about game when they come into the league. But whoever's in behind that, you are going to see the uproar from other fans that are going to come out, and they're going to rightly crucify Shamrock Rovers for this. But the question I would have now is, and this opens a bigger question, is what sort of tenancy rights do Shamrock Rovers women's have there compared to them? Because we know the men are the main tenants there. Does this tenancy stretch across to the women's? What is the process?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I would suspect, to be fair to Shamrock Rovers, I would suspect that the situation is that the women are the tenants there, but somebody somewhere forgot to flag the cup semi-finals and the draw before Leinster came knocking, and they looked at the calendar, nothing in green, nothing in confirmed for that date. Sure, no problem. Game goes ahead, and nobody thought to check the women's schedule. They probably checked the men's.
One thing that's frustrating.
Go on.
I'll give you one that's frustrating. Leinster Rugby announced tickets on sale, announced the game in Tala Stadium the same day that the cup semi-final draw took place.
Yeah,
so it's not as if Roberts could have turned around and been like, "Here, we've made this can't happen," and not even Roberts South Dublin, and it makes everybody look bad. And the thing about it is, Tala Stadium has been unbelievable for the Irish women's team. We've seen great success there. We've seen great things there, great nights there. And we've seen some unbelievable cup finals there as well. And this was an opportunity for Rovers to get a massive crowd on Saturday night.
The only thing is, I've seen this again before. Someone just didn't do their job, someone just didn't check. And it could be someone in Rovers, it could be someone in South Dublin, it could be someone in the FAI, could be someone in Leinster who have less blame in this argument because they went and booked a venue and went ahead in good faith. But it's been a thing for a couple of weeks, and to see that it hasn't been resolved until today is frustrating.
The fact that I have to send follow-up emails to ask questions to say, and like I have a WhatsApp group where a couple of lads are Rovers fans, and at that stage they were none the wiser. They were hearing multiple different options as well, and it's like, what's going to be? And the other side of it as well is, from an Athlone viewpoint, like the game had to be played this weekend.
Yeah.
No if, buts, or maybes, because if this game wasn't played midweek, you were sort of at the weekend. You were sort of talking then Athlone having another midweek fixture on top of already having rearranged games. Like, is the other side of it as well is up until yesterday, the FAI were still advertising that Athlone were playing Cork City next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday week in the league when they're actually playing a European game that night, and now they've rearranged that game. But like, it's them things, and like, for me, the biggest frustration is the fact that we've now lost another TV game. We've now lost another opportunity on a prime time on a Saturday evening to have a great exposure for the women's football, and that's gone now because the game is on the TG Carr player. I've no blame at all here on TG Carr.
Yeah, no, and Leinster Rugby. To be fair, there's a mess up somewhere.
Leinster went and approached. That's like me turning around to someone. I mean, like, can I book your boardroom for a day? I want to have a business meeting. And then all of a sudden, they put a last minute board meeting in there, and it's like, well, we've agreed to this. You'll have to.
So I think it's just a case that the potential fixture for Shamrock Rovers wasn't flagged early enough, which, like, 99 times out of 100, it's fine. So it's just, now I don't want to slam down on one individual, but I reckon it's literally that. It's somebody just didn't send an email going, by the way, the cup draw is this date. We could have a home game on this date if it goes through. So it's just, I wouldn't even say bad communication. It's unfortunate communication more so than anything else.
But it's unfortunate communication.
The response has been poor.
It's an unfortunate communication that leads to another black mark on women's football.
Yeah, but the thing is, both were announced. It seems crazy that once they both went into the public domain, the rugby game and the women's football game, let's be honest, this is Ireland. Women's sport does not come into the picture at all for most people. There's no way that even as anchor tenants that Tallaght Stadium were turning down a full house for a Leinster rugby game versus maybe 1,500 max for a women's soccer game. Unfortunately, given the nature of this show, we would disagree with that. But that's just the economics of it. It's the opportunity growth with Leinster coming and playing more games there pre-season from a stadium development point of view. Stadium is top notch. Everybody wants a piece of it. I get it. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but
and the other side of it is, right, if we get a deluge of rain Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, say for example, that pitch gets absolutely tore up on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then you're going into that game. So, because what I think back to is, I look back to the run of games where Ireland played, where Shamrock Rovers played in Europe on the Thursday. Ireland played in a Nations League game on the Friday, and it was deluge of rains early in the year, and how bad that pitch got destroyed.
Yeah.
I just hope the weather is good for the week.
It's absolutely nuts. But you know what? Actually, this week there was a bit of football played. There was actually some games played.
And we haven't talked about it. We haven't talked about them in
total. We're over halfway through the show. We haven't even talked about a single one. And we've so much to talk about. We've Sligo coming back from the dead to score a goal with a bit of a crossbar, did a cross the line effort from Muireann Devaney to put them in striking position from 2-0 down, and then a last minute penalty that very unfortunate for the Treaty player who gave it away. But Paul McCrory made no mistake. They got a draw from the jaws of defeat in Sligo. They'll be happy with that result. It feels like a win, I think, at that stage when you get any kind of result from 2-0 down with a couple of minutes on the clock. Bella Fulcini, another absolute worldly from her in that game as well.
And a beautiful assist.
Yep. Galway United. What?
Just before you do that, I had one major topic that I had on my the third major topic on my list for tonight. And since you're mentioning Sligo, is Bella Fulcini putting herself into that top 3 for Player of the Year? I think she is. I think she's right up there. And she's right up there with the girls in Athlone. She's right up there with Mackenzie Anthony and Shel's. I think Bella Fulcini is a shoe-in for Team of the Year. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another Bella Fulcini player of the month award before the end of the year. I think she's
only got the one this year so far.
It's actually, you know what? It's actually quite shocking, and I just every time when I look back and things, I just keep thinking about text message you sent me on the opening day of the season. It's the funny thing about it. The funny thing about it is right is I don't think you could have thought she was. You thought she was going to be good. I don't think you could have thought she's going to be that good. You know, and she's just got so much better the more she's played for Treaty. And interesting enough, she was off the park when Sligo scored the 2 goals. It was she played a lovely ball for Tierney's goal, and it was a really nice finish. But for me, that looked like it was dead and buried.
Yeah. And I think it's for Sean Russell as well, I think. Yeah, no, I'll disagree with you. I thought she was in the frame for player of the year after about 15 minutes in the first game. She had a move. I can't remember what it was. It was a long ball came in and she had a touch. She flicked the ball past the defender and had a shot that didn't really threaten the goalkeeper, but I was like, going, she's a baller. And I text you and says, we're going to be talking about this girl a lot this year. She's been phenomenal. There's been some other really impressive players in the league, and I think it's going to be a really, really good conversation. But again, let's not talk about awards. Let's talk about the actual football. With the Sligo Treaty game, Shel's Galway was massive last weekend.
Let's spend a couple of minutes on Sligo Treaty.
Well, I was going to come back to it. I was just going to give us a rundown of the games. Rovers beaten 2-0 by Athlone, a massive result in the league title race. Shel's losing, obviously, to a comeback victory from Galway United at home in Terryland, or Eamon DC Park, as it's called. That was a huge...
Before you go any further, I want to ask a question to you. And you probably haven't seen this because you've been out of the loop the last couple of days. Next, I think it's July and August, there's talk that Eamon DC Park has to be ripped up due to drainage issues. They've approached the Galway County Board about playing League of Ireland games there. I didn't see anything to see whether that includes the women as well.
No, I think we'll see the women move around like they have done out to the junior clubs. And I think that's probably okay too, to go out to the likes of Merview or Salt Hill, or they've been to other places as well.
My thing on this is we're talking 18 months, we're talking a year notice.
Yeah.
Of something that needs to be done in Eamon DC Park.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they're going to turn around next summer and be like, the ground's closed for a month. Sorry, girls.
Yeah.
So I don't really have an issue with it, but I'd be interested to see if they play any in Pearse Stadium. I'd love to see them play a game there.
I can't see it happen. I think it'll be a case of out to the junior grounds where you can really create an atmosphere at those women's games. You get 500 or 600 people from the local community in on top of what might be coming anyway. You could have 1,000 people at those games, and they generate a bit of revenue for the junior clubs. They generate a bit of atmosphere. You're giving girls who might not travel in to go. When I say girls, I mean like 12, 13-year-olds who play football for these clubs in the local leagues, the opportunity to see them in the same pitch that they play on every week. And I think that could be huge for them as they go forward. Let me finish the other results, though, because otherwise I'll be here all night. Peas with a big 5-0 victory over Waterford. That's a big statement from Peamount after we'd written them off on last week's show. As well as that, we had a DLR Waves and Wexford. Wexford must have been on the beer all week after the All-Ireland Cup winner. A 0-0 for them. They'll be disappointed not to have added to their tally and kept the title challenge, what might be left of it. I think it's pretty much evaporated now at this stage. And Bows, of course, the final game of the season. Final game of the weekend, 2-0. There was, of course, the Athlone Waterford game middle of last week, after last week's show. 2-0 for Athlone down there. So they picked up a massive 6 points, while Shel's beaten, Wexford beaten, who they were in third going into the season. Treaty were fourth. They only picked up a single point. So Wexford drew with DLR, and then Galway leapfrogged the two of them with that win. Where do we even start? Where do you want to go? We'll go with Sligo. You wanted to start there.
Yeah, I wanted to more talk about the character of Sligo, because when they got that first goal, they go and get that second goal. They over the ball over the line. Isn't this?
I think it was.
I don't think Steve Feeney will care once that referee points to the halfway line. Steve Feeney won't care. I think it's a very unlucky penalty to concede, in the sense of it is a bit of inexperience, and it's similar to what we've seen with Shelbourne in the All Ireland Cup semi-final with the penalty where the hand goes up. It's a penalty all day long, and Paula McGrory sort of converts it. For me, I think that's a really, really positive result for Sligo. But the other side of it, though, for if you're Treaty, I know probably Sean Russell, if you're looking at it 2-0 up, he's probably having a little bit of an eye on that FAI Cup semi-final, because if you look at the substitutes on the 78th minute, he took off both Isabella Flacchini and Katie Lawley. Like, he'd already taken off. He'd already made some subs earlier in the game, taking off the likes of Gillian Keenan. Keenan's been very good for him since coming back in. It's definitely going to be 2 points dropped for Treaty United. They were in control, and that 2 points could be massive, considering if they had won that game, we're talking Treaty are in third place.
Yeah,
in the league, and it's one I think that they'll look back at. They'll be feeling, yeah, we let 2 points slip there. But if they can sort of lick their wounds and regroup and go and beat Bows this week in the FAI Cup semi-final, I think that'll be. I think it'll all be forgotten. But for Sligo Rovers, come here, it's a really good point. It's a really good recovery point for them, and I think they've shown some things, like especially off the back of getting beaten 8-0 out the gate by Shelbourne the week before 2-0 down, sort of looking like it's not going their way, and then to sort of come back. I think that's a real character boost and a real confidence builder for Sligo to get back into that game. I think even though Treaty did make a couple of changes.
Yeah, and I think if you rewind back to the start of the season, like you take the last 2 or 3 games out of last year, it's a dismal year last year for Sligo, and they came into this season not really inspiring confidence in terms of the lack of players coming in, and maybe a couple of players who moved on or opted out for various reasons. Or you look at the flow of players, like every year they've lost like their best player to somebody, whether it's Gemma McGuinness going to Galway, Emma Doherty going to Galway, Casey Howe going to Athlone and on to Forest. And like these girls, all quality, all getting contracts in England. And let's be honest,
Lockery sisters now gone and
yeah, so they lost the Lockeries at the end of last season, and there's a couple of girls who've opted to play junior in Sligo. There's a couple of girls who've opted to play GAA in Sligo. So they don't have the full complement. And I think rightly we were worried about them at the start of the year about how they would get on. Waterford went up there early doors in the season, and it looked like it could be a really, really long season for them. If memory serves, I think Waterford beat them 2-0 early on, and it looked like Sligo were going to be rock bottom of the league with probably 0 points. And I think the change in them in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of months, has been really.
So Cork City beat them 4-0. Then they lost 2-0 to Waterford. Then lost 5-1 to Wexford, and then shipped 3 against both Treaty and Galway.
Yeah,
so that's when they really went on that bad run.
Yeah, it looked. Now they did draw up Bows in the first game, so they were never going to be on 0 points. But you know what I mean. It looked like it was going to be bad. But
they draw up Bows twice this season.
the 2 wins in the middle of June kind of helped. They beat Waterford, they beat Cork, so they kind of reversed the early games, and that's kind of put them in a really respectable position. They're 4 points clear of Cork, four games
Excuse
to go.
Me, sorry, I've something in my throat there. You haven't even mentioned the fact that they beat Peamount United.
Well, it's hard to see them not. It's hard to see them dropping back into the bottom 2 the way Cork and Waterford seasons are going. They're 3 or 4 points ahead of them respectively.
So biggest game of the season for me, biggest game of the season for them comes up in a couple of weeks. If they can beat DLR,
yep,
and pick up a point in some of the other game, is there a potential that they can finish it? If you look at DLR have got Athlone, Shells themselves, got Sligo, and then they've got Galway, where Sligo Rovers they've got a difficult one, but they've got Peamount, Bows, Athlone, and DLR. But the thing is, when they play Athlone on the last day of the season, Athlone mightn't have anything to play for if they're already champions. Well, if they play Bows, if Bows losing that FAI Cup semi-final, Bows mightn't have anything to play for. Peamount are just sort of, so it's a case of, could they catch DLR? They're 3 points behind Waves with a worse goal difference. Could they leapfrog Waves? If they could and finish ahead of Waves at the end of the season, I think that'd be a massive season for Sligo Rovers.
Yeah, I think based on the expectations going in, it will be unbelievable. But where do they go to from here, Aaron? Because going back to Steve Feeney, it seemed like a step back in some ways, but I know they've advertised for an under-17 manager in the last week as well. It just seems to not be quite happening for Sligo.
It's where do you get the players is my bigger concern rather than who's in charge of them next season. If Steve Feeney's in charge of them next season, I think Steve has the capabilities of having another good year with them. The problem is and so as you say, is it's who are they potentially going to lose this off season? That's the sort of thing where it's like, who are they potentially going to lose? If they lose 1 or 2 more players, and you're sort of thinking it's nearly like a constant rebuild where it's never been a sort of a settle.
Yeah,
and I think that's where it gets more and more difficult. And then, like, the only one thing I will say is they're probably in a lot better position than even the likes of Corks and Waterford, the way their seasons have sort of ended. So if I'm Sligo Rovers, listen, it's been a highly positive season considering where it looked like it was going to be at the start of the year.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on. We've talked enough about Treaty over the last few weeks, so let's move on to another game. Let's talk Shells and Galway, because this could be title defining for both teams. Galway have taken 3 points from Shells. They went 1-0 down and came back with 2 decent goals, really. 2 headers.
Probably didn't deserve to be 1-0 down at half time. I think
Okay.
Galway had chances in that first half. Although Shells had more chances, Megan Smith Lynch and Nicole Nix nearly had a little battle, and the chance laid on as well where Nicole flicked it over the bar. I think probably Galway a little bit unlucky to go in 1-0 down at half time, and to get that equaliser so quickly after half time. I sort of felt in the second half, even before when they got that second goal from Ericsson, I didn't really necessarily think that Shells were going to get back into the game, or Shells were going to sort of get back in, and like I still think Shells without Kate Mooney is a completely different side, and like that performance against Sligo the week previously was everything that was good about Shells on the day. Problem is they just they don't necessarily have the squad to sort of to see this out, and I was concerned over this game. The other side of it as well is when you're 2-1 down in the game, you're seeing Aoibhinn Clancy's coming off, being replaced by Roman McLaughlin. Maybe nearly like to see the three of them, Clancy, McLaughlin, and Kavanagh sort of finish that game. Shells then went that Galway towards the very end, but I think Galway held on strong. And I think it was an important win for Galway. Shells, the question is, they've still got the likes of Treaty. They've still got some really, really big games. Is this going to be the last game that Shells are going to drop points this season? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think they could drop points in more games.
Shell's run-in is DLR Waves, Treaty, Athlone, Wexford, all home games, and then the final day of the season away in Tallaght, Shamrock Rovers. So you could say, based on current form, you'd expect them to get wins against DLR, possibly Treaty, although you never know. Shamrock Rovers, you'd expect them, although they've a terrible record against Rovers. And then at home to Athlone and Wexford, you'd make them favourites against Wexford. Would you make them favourites against Athlone? Not really.
Not really. But the other side of it then is if Treaty go and beat Bows this weekend in the cup, Treaty come back to Dublin next week, full of form, brimming with confidence, sort of coming into that game, and it's one of these for me that I just think Shell's injury, Shell's squad, and it's something that I said at the start of the year when we looked at Shell's squad. I thought Shell's squad was very, very light in terms of player depth, and especially when Kate gets injured against Bows, you're sort of thinking. It took Mackenzie Anthony a bit of time to sort of readjust because she's having to play a different role. Herself and Noelle have sort of had to really work together to be able to even play together because they're two very similar players, whereas Kate Mooney was able to get in behind them. I just think for Shells, the season could easily just capitulate. Like they could lose 2 or 3 of them last couple of games, but yet again they could win them all. And I don't see them winning the title the way things are at the minute.
Do you see the Fortune feud affect Athlone, and could Shells get back into this? Probably not.
So the problem is in this situation, the fact that Shells dropped them points last week gives Athlone that little bit of an opportunity to sort of turn around and maybe make alterations. Like you look at when they go to Waves, or Waves come to Athlone on the 20th. They don't necessarily have to start all their first team players. They can rotate some in the way they did against Waterford. You'd still have confidence in getting the result. I think from their situation, the fact that the Cork City game is being put the week after the Shelbourne game, the midweek after the Shelbourne game, instead of the midweek before the Shelbourne game, I think is massive for Athlone. Like, the thing about it for me is, if Shells to get anything out of Athlone, I think Shells need to be a 9 out of 10 to get anything out of Athlone. And I just don't see the way the Shell squad is at the minute that they are probably capable of doing it.
Yeah. Let's talk Bows, Cork City. 2-0 win for Bows. Pretty routine. Not a whole pile to see here other than just Bows kind of just getting the job done. They'll be pretty lax defending for the first header from Alana McAvoy.
Yeah, and Leah Glennon with the second goal. I think this is an important win for Bows. It's what, a month since they last won the league, 2 defeats and a draw. Consider then the All-Ireland Cup defeat as well last week against Wexford on penalties. I think they needed this, especially going into that FAI Cup semi-final the weekend against Treaty. Like, I've been speaking to people within Bows, and what's sort of been said to me is that some of the people in the community are hoping, can they potentially get 2,000 at this game? They're really pushing to try and get as many kids, as many people in the gate in Dalymount, because I think it's no more of what I said a couple of weeks ago about Shells needing 1,600 against Athlone in Tolka Park to sort of have that sort of crowd on their side. I think Bows need this at the weekend. Bows need a big crowd at the weekend as well. We've seen how it helped them against Shells in the All-Ireland Cup. For me, Treaty United are favourites to win this game, win the game the weekend, and I think Bows stopping the rot is important, but I think they'll need another big performance. The big question is, and we probably won't find out till Saturday, is Katie McCarron available? He said to me in Wexford that he hoped to have her back for the semi-final available, whether she can come off the bench. I think if Katie McCarron could play any sort of part for Bows, it'd be massive. You can see how much of a loss she has been for them, and it sort of changes that dynamic as well within the Bows team. But I think it's a really important win for Bows against Cork City.
Yeah, Peamount 5-0 winners against Waterford. Probably not that surprising, but Peamount have struggled at times this year. They look pretty clinical at the weekend.
Probably should have been a lot more than 5-0. Being honest, probably should have been a lot more than 5-0. I think the amount of chances that Peamount had, the amount of times they hit the post, the amount of times the ball was cleared off the line as well. I think this could have been an awful lot more. I think it's great to see Sive Doyle start playing Sive Doyle type football. Because when Sive Doyle clicks, Peamount United are a completely different team. The only downside out of this game is the news that Jess Fitzgerald has moved abroad for Peamount. I think it's a bit of a loss. There was a bit of talk of Ellen Dolan potentially going as well, but from what was said to me today, is Dolan hasn't. I think she was brilliant for them at the weekend. I thought she was very, very good for them at the weekend, and I think Peamount, the run they're on right now, if they could finish that season off with a couple of more wins, I think it turns a really disappointing season into a much more, I would say, pleasing appetite, because you're looking at now, they're only a point behind. They're a point behind Shamrock Rovers in 6th and 7th. There's one for you now, Breifne. I predicted at the start of the season Shamrock Rovers will finish 7th.
You did?
They may finish 8th, the way things are going at the minute.
Yeah,
I think for Peamount, if Peamount can keep winning, can they put that pressure on Treaty? They're 6 points behind Treaty United, but they have a game in hand. Could they do it? Potentially still have to play Treaty, I think.
Treaty probably are okay in 5th at the minimum. I think it's up. I'd be looking, if I'm Sean Russell, I wouldn't be looking down at all. So
I wouldn't be surprised if Peamount catch them. And that's just being honest with the fact that they've got Shells, Peamount, and Bows still to play.
Maybe it's disappointing that not Ellen Dolan, that Jess Fitzgerald has left the league. I think when I hear these news, and I know she's not the only one this week that has kind of moved on, but I hear these youngsters getting opportunities abroad, and I'm delighted for them personally. But every little one of them is a little pinprick in the kind of the morale of the league, I think, and it's just frustrating to see these players leave for peanuts, for no return. They get.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Our international manager will be very happy, because talked a big game about the League of Ireland, but then wants players abroad. So our League of Ireland our international manager will be very happy that more players.
I don't think an international manager in the last 20 years who hasn't believed that as well, and I don't think that's fair on Carla Ward. To be fair, that's not a new thing. I'd love to see it change, because
she come in and talk the League of Ireland this, the League of Ireland that, and then all of a sudden.
But I think that's the thing that I think that's an Irish football culture, is that you come in from outside, and when you start talking about League of Ireland, you can big it up and go, look at the players who are here, and you've got your Ellen Malloys and your Jess Fitzgeralds and these girls who are in the reckoning for international honours. Katie Keane at the time when she came in.
But what happens then if someone gets gets on a magic plane and all of a sudden gets into the Ireland squad?
But you've cut me off, and I think the problem I wanted to say was there's a culture within Irish football that doesn't believe the League of Ireland is good enough. It exists in the men's, it exists in the women's. And I think when you meet the wrong person, if you come in as an outsider, you start to hear this from more people than tell you the League of Ireland's great, that's the problem. And it's an Irish. I don't think it's necessarily the manager's fault. If you come in and you have the official chats with the CEO and the board, and they're like going, yeah, the league is great, this, that, and the other, and look at these players, and they give you examples, and then you meet the nuts and bolts people on the ground, and enough of them, and unfortunately, I think this is the truth, enough of them will tell you, yeah, but the league's shit. And that's the problem you've got, is that there's not enough of a support within the structures of the game for the elite levels of the game in this country, male or female. And if you're based in England and half the players are playing near you every other week, why would you come over here when people are kind of saying?
But my biggest gripe with international manager over the last couple of years has been is a player gets on a special flight and they may only be in England for a week or two, and all of a sudden they're in an Ireland squad. Yeah. Like, why not call them in the League of Ireland? If they literally go over there and don't even play a game at that stage, and they're already in your, but
I don't disagree with you, but I think the reality is you got to look at the professional setups in England, and you take a girl who's maybe 16, no, she can't go to 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, maybe just fresh out of college, that kind of age group, and you take her from training 2, 3, 4 nights a week, maybe, to a full professional setup where she's resting appropriately, where she's got the right supports around her. And I think, other than what I've heard out of Galway, where Phil has explained to us on the show about the people that are around him in terms of the strength and conditioning, the medical, and the focus that the club have put on making sure the right people are in those jobs. Not to say other clubs don't have them here and there, but it's very much about the support and the environment and that. I think more of our clubs need to do that. Some of them do it really, really well, and some of them, like we've seen, first 20 minutes of the show, can't even have a conversation with each other without falling out and leaving. So we need to get better environments. We need to get more professional in terms, and I'm not saying money, because professional to me is an attitude, not the financial side of things. We need to get better at that in terms of the environment and the expectations and the life decisions that people are making in terms of how they prepare for games, that it becomes their focus. Because when that player, yes, she might only be there a couple of weeks, but I promise you put a girl in where she's training 5 days a week, full time, proper rest, her touch is going to be better, her awareness is going to be better, even in a short space of time. The improvement in her touch alone will probably be massive in the first month of going over there. So there's an element to it where I think she's only just gotten a flight. What's the difference? There is a difference, and it's down to that environment that they're in on a daily basis and the focus that football has in their world.
My big problem with this is that we just continue to look for players who are of Irish descent.
Yeah,
that's the other side of it as well. Is we just keep looking at players who are of an Irish descent, to whereas how is the League of Ireland ever going to improve?
Yeah,
the other side of it is just turn around and say, listen, we don't care about the League of Ireland, because, be honest, I mean, and that's the side of it, because if you're just going to come and take players from abroad, the league is never going to improve. And you're taking players who, like a prime example is Mel Phillips, who was with Charlton, who was brought into one camp, never seen again.
Yeah.
Now moved on. I think she's somewhere in Italy. It was literally one camp in gone.
Played one game for half an hour.
Played 45 minutes after literally landing on a flight from Australia to Marbella.
Yeah,
like it's not right.
She's back in Europe now, isn't she?
She is in Sweden, I think.
Yeah. So I agree with you, and I think we look at rugby in the men's game, where if you leave the country, if you don't play for one of the 4 provinces, you can't play for Ireland. Now, that's unrealistic. But I think we should be looking at the likes of these girls. Let's get them. The home training thing didn't work. It needs to be a full-time operation. These girls need to be training somewhere in the country, maybe not Dublin, just for the cost of living and the cost of the program, but these girls need to be centered together in a training group, 15 to 20 of them on contracts from the FAI, and then go back and play for their clubs at weekends, if that makes sense. That's what we need, something like that, where the cream of the crop come in and get that professional experience. They're playing football every day.
But we now see players who leave education within the last year or two of education, to go chase the contract in Scotland or the poor contracts in England now, because they think that's going to bring them closer to
in Ireland,
to an Ireland gig, and like,
and it is
the prime
That's
example for me. The one thing I look at is, and do you know what, she probably never gets the credit she deserves for, is Amber Barrett. Amber Barrett is playing professional football now. She's a master's in her back pocket. She's all her education in her back pocket, and now we see a lot of these players trying to sort of do it in the background. Whereas she prioritised when she got her education, then she left Peamount, and went for the opportunity abroad. And like, I think, and the second half of her career has probably worked out a lot better since she has gone. But the other side of it for me is, I think some players think they need to be gone by 18, they need to be gone by 19. But then what about the players who go and sit in England, don't play football at all?
Like Ciara Grant is another great example of it. Do you know what I mean? Like this, and there's probably dozens that we could come up with who've done the qualification first, and then at 22, 23, then they decide, okay, I've got that piece of paper.
Ciara Grant was much even older than that when she would have done it. Ciara Grant would have been what,
27, maybe
26, 27 when she made the move.
And it's a much better time. If in life you make so many mistakes at 19, 20, like it's a much healthier time to be going and moving to a different country and dealing with all the stuff that happens when you're in a different country. I'm not saying don't do the other one. If for some people it's the right move, but I think education should be, the women's game should be paramount. Improve the person, not just the footballer, if that makes sense.
Well, the big thing on this is, like, players go for peanuts, in the sense of the money they earn when they go abroad. Some of them even have to get jobs and stuff like that to actually, because the money's just not there. And like, if the money's not there and you're going to risk so much, like, it's for the clubs, it's low risk, high reward when they bring a player in on cheap contracts because they're away. Whereas for a player, it's high risk, low reward a lot of the times. Like, we don't see many. How many of them Irish players do we see come and make a really, really strong career out of themselves that have gone to England? Like, if you think about players who've gone from, say, the Women's Premier Division to the WSL, who have excelled. Okay, so obviously Heather Payne went through America, had a spell in America, then went to Everton, done well enough at Everton. Katie McCabe, a lot of the other youngsters, they're all getting.
And even
but they would have been even before. They would have even been before that. So the likes, they would have been before that. But now we're seeing the younger players now go, whereas they're getting multiple loan moves. They're going to these big clubs. They're never playing for them. Like, Tyler Tolan probably played a handful of appearances for City. Tara Holland's gone out on loan, hasn't played for City due to injury. Jessie Stapleton's on her third loan move at West Ham. Like, they go to these big clubs, and then the clubs are sending them out on loan, and it's like, it's not always what it makes out to, what it's made out to be. As much as the agent will tell you, come and do this. Just before we wrap this bit up, obviously we did mention with Sherald, Scarlett Heron also going to Hibs as well. And listen, I think Scarlett's going to be a big loss for Shamrock Rovers. I think she's probably an unsung hero for them, and we're going to continue to see these moves happen more and more as the league goes on.
Yeah, 2 final games to wrap up. We'll get to them very quickly. DLR Waves versus Wexford, 0-0. That's about as much time as we're going to give that game. We'll move on, I think, because it was just disappointing. I think it was a bit of a non-event, really.
Yeah, and considering Wexford haven't won the All-Ireland Cup and getting up to third, that's 2 bad results in a row in the league they've had, especially considering the loss against Treaty as well. It's nearly as if that third place is slipping.
Yeah. A final game of the weekend was, of course, probably the most important from the Athlone point of view. We did touch on it at the top of the show, but 2-0 winners over Shamrock Rovers. All we can really say here is Rovers need to work on defending. It was just terrible. Individual errors, not good enough.
Yeah, I think when you look at the first goal, when Kelly Brady sort of blocks down Summer Lawless, I think Kelly Brady's reaction sort of says it all. And then when Roisin Malloy nips in and robs possession after Shamrock Rovers win the ball back, and Malloy's always going to pounce on that situation. It's just for Shamrock Rovers, it's a really, really poor result. Like, for Athlone, you're probably thinking 2-0 up early on, happy days, see this game out, prepare for Champions League. Probably never thought what was going to happen, but it's been an interesting couple of days in the Midlands.
Let's finish off with that look at that Champions League game at the weekend. We think Gordon Brett. We've no indications from the club that's what's going to happen, but you can't really bring in a new face at this stage 24 hours or 36 hours before the game. It's going to have to be the kind of the current team taking on the preparation of the team for the next 24 hours. If you're in that dressing room, though, what's going through your head?
That's an interesting. That's a big question. I think if you're one of the players, it's like, you know what, let's go. I think the players will realise that the opportunity's still there. I just hope that it doesn't overshadow the first leg in particular, and then all of a sudden they have a massive uphill. Because if they can come out and get something out of that first leg, even if it's a 1-goal defeat, you know, bringing that back to Athlone on Wednesday week will be massive. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they approach everything in relation to this game. And I wouldn't want to be in the. I don't know. You'd want to be in the dressing room, and then again, you wouldn't want to be in the dressing room because it's probably a little bit of everything going on in terms of conversations that the players have been having with the club over the last couple of days.
Well, I think that's the big one for me, is that the next 7 or 8 days could be defining for Athlone's future as a really important player in the women's game here in Ireland. Because if they were to get tonked on Wednesday night, the return leg becomes moot. Athlone players are starting to look elsewhere because they're not quite sure what's going on at the club. It's that silly season where people are looking at different options. There's so many foreign girls coming in who will be getting offers from other countries, other clubs within Ireland as well. And so you could see you lose the heart of that team. If they are competitive going into next week, it buys them a week. If somehow they were to get through the tie, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility, although it is a bit
boys and water 4 weeks.
Yeah, but all of a sudden then it buys you 4 weeks where the girls are like, well, I'm not leaving before that. I'm on board, and then you get to build the confidence again within that squad. And I think Athlone need to get through this group now at this stage, because I think they need to get through that game, because otherwise the alternative is potentially dangerous for the future of the club in terms of, can they keep and it's always a problem when you're relying on foreign players coming in. If you lose 1 or 2, all of a sudden it's more than just what happens on the pitch. It's these girls all live together, these girls hang out together, they socialize together, some of them might even have part-time jobs together, and they take each other's leads, if that makes sense. So if a Maddie Gibson or any of the girls really that are coming from abroad to say, Izzy Groves go, well, I'm done at the end of the year, I'm gone, it makes it an awful lot easier for the next girl to go, well, if she's gone, I'm gone. And then all of a sudden you lose 5 or 6 players, the key players in your team, essentially, and you're in trouble next year. They're back mid-table. They're back down with the Peamount or the DLR or Bohemians or Shamrock Rovers in terms of just relying on the girls from around the area. And I think that could be a problem for Athlone.
Yeah, massive problem. But this is where we're going to see how committed these new owners are as well over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Anyway, that is it for this week. Anything else before we so much we wanted to talk about that we've just kind of run out of time. And the shows are getting longer and longer, and we need to be more behaved.
I think we've done well for an hour and 8 minutes tonight, considering what's being ranted about.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. Let's take a quick look at the league table before we wrap up. This is how it looks at the moment. We did touch on it. Athlone 4 points clear at the top. All of the 4 top teams with 5 games remaining. Shel's 4 points behind Galway. Big gap back, 6 points behind Shel's there. 10 off the table. It's pretty much done for them, barring an absolute miracle at this stage. Wexford dropping, should I say, a little bit further down the table. Treaty and Shamrock Rovers on 18 apologies. Treaty on 18 points. Sorry, 18 games, 32 points played. Shamrock Rovers 5 behind them. Bows and Peamount on 26, both with a game in hand on the 2 teams above them. And then the bottom 4 sides, DLR Waves, just 3 points clear of Sligo themselves, 3 points clear of Waterford, and Cork City picking up at the bottom of the table there, a point behind Waterford. But it's been an interesting time for everybody. The fixtures this weekend, just to run through them, of course, the 2 cup semi-finals, they dominate proceedings, but there are some league games ongoing as well. As I look at the fixtures here, Shells, they host DLR, and Peamount host Galway United. Shells, DLR is at 4 o'clock. Peamount is also is at 5 o'clock kickoff. Those games taking place as the cup semi-finals. Shamrock Rovers and Athlone is now on Sunday, and Saturday sees Bows and Treaty do battle. So plenty of games, and of course Wexford and Bows, they play each other next week in the league. We will be back before that happens. We'll try and get a show in after the Glasgow City game this week.
Is that that game is Wednesday, that falls, and
according to FAI Connect, it is tomorrow, Tuesday.
Okay, so they're going Tuesday. Okay, so they're going the day before the Champions League.
Yeah. We will be back with a show probably Thursday or Friday this week. We'll have a chat ourselves, but we will see you later in the week. Just given everything that's going on, we want to talk actual football for a change. It'd be quite nice to talk about football on a football podcast. Can't argue that. Don't forget, if you're with us this far, thank you so much. You're braver than we are listening to us talk rubbish for the last hour and 10 minutes or so. You can, of course, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We should be there. Or watch us if you want to see our dashingly handsome, devilishly handsome faces. You're more than welcome to tune in.
Or
as well.
Breifne the baby face early.
I know I had to get rid of the beard. It was irritating me too much. I recommend it. It feels my whole face feels lighter, and you could take a leaf out of my book as well. Mind you, in 6 weeks it'll be back to the way it was. We'll be back again probably Thursday evening. We'll chat to you then. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon.